Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. But pardon, gentles all, the flat, unraised spirits that hath dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casks that did affright the air at Agincourt? Oh, pardon, since a crooked figure might attest in little place a million, and let us, ciphers to this great account, on your imaginary forces work. Suppose between the girdle of these walls are now confined two mighty monarchies, whose high upreared and abutting fronts the perilous narrow ocean parts asunder. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts. Into 1,000 parts divide one man, and make imaginary puissance. Think, when we talk of horses, that you see them printing their proud hoofs in the receiving earth. What is your thoughts that now must deck our kings, carry them here and there, jumping o'er times, turning the accomplishment of many years into an hourglass? For the which supply, admit me chorus to this history, who prologue like, your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge our play. Hello. Welcome to the channel. Brian Jennings here, the Critical Sorcerer. This channel exists to discuss my pathological relationship with Quentin Tarantino. Quentin and I are now locked in a case study of clairvoyance and remote viewing. The two of us have the strongest connection in terms of psychic resonance that any two people have had ever. Right? Now, I suspect there's like 4 other people involved, but it could all just be him, just different chambers of his psyche. Right? Aleister Crowley says that when you begin the practice of like a demon conjuring, as far as like black magic, that all that's really occurring is the one area of your psyche is calling another area. Right? So in that way, right, perhaps everything that he's been burying me in is all a sick intellectual exercise from him. I wrote Quentin a series of letters about playing the lead in the movie Critic in the summer of 2023. Right? And in December of 2023, right, the press announced that he had halted his production, right? And he jumped into my mind and started remote viewing me and digging around in my head. So I started writing him again, right? And so towards the end of January, the press announced that Brad Pitt was reuniting with him, and he stopped accepting my mail. So I was really upset. I was really depressed because I had written him a lot. I wrote him like 50 pages. I didn't write him 5 pages. Not like constantly. I wasn't weird about it. I sent him the 4 letters, which were written over the course of 1 week. Really, it was 3 letters, but then they all came back. Return to sender. And so I found another address, wrote a 4th letter, right? Stapled them all together. It was like maybe like 16 pages. Composition notebook, not full 8.5 by 11, but front and back, no blank lines. And that was in July, around the 4th of July, 2023. And then I didn't write anything else. I thought, no, there's nothing else to say. What could I say? Right? So, right? After I processed it, right, that he wasn't going to say anything to me, despite me sending him a badass scene, right, that he's going to use in the movie Critic, right? I said, okay, I'm gonna write about it. And I wrote a 7,000 word essay reminding the public at large that Brad Pitt and Cliff Booth are the same person, right? that Cliff Booth killed his wife on a boat and got away with it because Brad Pitt beat up his wife on an airplane and got away with it. That's what writers do. He pulled it out of the air, put it in the water, right? I would say it's not up for debate, that it's obvious, that everyone in town knew it. And so I don't care about that, right? It's literary cannon fodder. Like, this is what writers do, right? Like, I'm a writer. I'm a writer as well as an actor, right? But for Sony to campaign, right, for him to win an Oscar, in Quentin's mind. So Quentin, like, in his mind, right, he told Brad, "Oh, this is great. You'll turn it into a virtue. It's great." Right? Everyone knows this is you owning it, right? And as far as that is concerned, right? I can see that. But for the Academy, right? For Sony to campaign, and for the Academy to award an Oscar to a man for beating up his wife and, getting away with spousal abuse, that's not cool, right? So I published the essay, and then I started reviewing movies in protest. I reviewed 3 films. The third one, which was Gone with the Wind, a 4,500 word review, I tweeted it directly to him, his personal Twitter, right, at Tarantino tweet, right, which has a picture of him holding a gun to his head, right, if that tells you anything, right? Said, there it is, feel free to read the other 2, as you and or your final film are mentioned in both of them. And he canceled the film the following day. I took everything down, because I'm cool, sent him a letter immediately, refused at the door, right? He announced he was doing a screening of Jackie Brown at De Niro Con, right? And so I kept talking to my coworkers about it, and the one guy, he says, well, maybe he's doing like a book signing or something, maybe he needs to see you. And I said, no, it's stalkerish. That's bullshit. I don't want to do that. But inevitably I cracked for the Jackie Brown screening. And I bought a good fella ticket, right? That's a $500 ticket, right? So, right? Again, Quentin is a powerful clairvoyant, one of the most powerful in the world. He remote views people, right? Right? Once he knew that I was coming, right? He worked his magic and got me to buy his book, right? And when he saw me reading it, he said, oh, can you come up with some good questions? Right? So, I came up with 10 questions, right? I had them in the back of the book for like a year, but just upset me after enough time. I'll throw them away. But a week before Tribeca, right? We're remote view. He's remote viewing me every day, right? Right? People are trying to make me certain people are trying to make me choke on my food, right? And it's all, I see now that it was all bullshit. It's all like him, right? Like, he led me to believe that, like, I was hearing him have conversations, right? Talking about how all the points that I made were really great, right? So, cut to the day, right? I waited out in line 3 hours to be in the front of the line, be in the front row, right? For Jackie Brown. Right? Had really nice conversations with everyone, talking about movies, talking about everything. Guy was talking about how he saw Taylor Swift in like Norway or something. It's really funny. It's like, what the fuck? But, right? The screening ends, the 2 of them come out, right? And everything that he says is in relation to me getting up on stage and questioning him to be announced as the movie critic, right? So, at the end of the screening, or at the end of the conversation, right? I had my letter, right? Here's the letter, which I've read in another video. Said, I was hoping you'd sign my copy of Cinema Speculation. He said, oh, where should I sign? I said, wherever you'd like, right? And so, right, there it is. It's right there. right? I pushed this letter all the way up to his face, right? Because I wrote him a week prior, and he refused my letter again. So that's twice that he refused my mail after he canceled the film, right? And so he stuck his nose up at me and turned his back on me. And so I did the same thing. Yes, was it petty? Yes, 100%. I make no qualms about that, right? That if I had nothing but ambition, I wouldn't have even written the letter. Something inside of me compelled me to write the letter, right? And something inside of me compelled me to turn my back and leave, right? And so it's obvious, right, that everything that he's done since then, right, that all he's done is tell people that I'm insane because he doesn't want to admit that he played Russian roulette with his career. Right? There's no document. There's nothing for me to point to and say, this is where, right? This is where he told me he wants me to question him about cinema speculation, right? That's, right? He went out of his way to not talk to me like a normal person, right? And so now, like after I burned him, right? He had no choice, I guess, in his mind, right? To do everything he can to make me seem insane. Because, right, he doesn't want to admit, right, that his psychic prowess wasn't enough to make me bend to his psychic whim. Right? Right, and so that's who he is. That's the type of guy he is. You know? That he doesn't want to talk to people. Oh, so you think that you don't have to like talk to people like regularly. With me, you do. Right? Your bullshit manipulation games, you can play them on everyone else. You know? But I hated myself for months, right? This is the subject of the novel. I've written in all of my experiences. It's called Building a Coven. Right? And now, right, I suffered under the rack, right, for months on the street. Him just burying my mind in bullshit. Right, and it's all in those first few pages in the essay on magic, that he debased the immortal soul of his father-in-law, right? Told me he has a daughter who's in love with me, who wants my baby. Right? His daughter's a little girl. Right? He's put a bunch of psychic baggage around her psyche that only time will reveal the depth of the damage thereby. So, on the street, suffering the whole time, right? Right, all the while them going, ha 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 ha, look at this jackass, right? And so I wrote Fish, I wrote David Berlansky, I wrote Salman Rushdie about helping us reconcile. I was oblivious to his sinister conspiracy for a long time, right? For really 6 months. I never would conceive of someone, right, doing the things that he's done with ease, right? That he has no moral compass. He has no ethical standard, right? And so obviously, when I wrote the Discovery Institute, Quentin threw me under the bus. When I wrote Fish, he threw me under the bus, right? And so eventually, he shuffled me out of town, and it's all in that novel. And I ended up back here with my family in North Alabama. And so on New Year's Eve, this year, 12/31/2024, I decided to remote view for the first time, right? That I had just been like receiving, right? And that was the first time I started projecting, right, my thought force out, right? Projecting my conscious awareness out, right? And so the girl's name that he alleged was his daughter is Allison, Alllyson, Tarantino. I don't know if she's actually related to him in some way. I suspect she isn't, but she might know him. She might know him. Right? But as soon as I picked up her picture, Quentin says, "Oh, you can't force it. Who's forcing anything? This is how it's done." And now I don't even know if that was him. Right? But maybe it was. But anyways, it's irrelevant who it was, That as soon as I started, right, taking steps towards learning what the truth was with their tactics, like playing the game by their rules, right? That within days, she was a hooker who gets pissed on for $500 an hour. His daughter, that's a little girl, right? She's a little bitty girl, right? That now he's corrupted her magnetic aura with notions of her being a hooker who gets paid to have sex with men. Pretty funny, right? I'll just say, "Oh, this is my little girl. Like, she's a sweet little girl. Like, what is this guy? Like, what's he talking about?" Right? And so then, within days, more days, a couple days later, he admitted to me he has no adult daughter because I went off, right? That's the board, right? This is the vision board, celestial vision board, right? Not because I wanted to, right? But because he was taking steps to traumatize me, right? That he led me to believe, right? And let me fall in love with a psychic phantom. Like, pretty funny, got me good, right? And then that thing, right, that he conjured in my mind, right, when I started trying to find her in the psychic landscape, right? He conjured other things about her being, an escort who gets pissed on and who fucks 20 guys a day, right? 5 guys at the same time. Right? And not only that she does that, but that while she's doing it, right, she concerns herself with torturing me here. And so I poisoned her mind, right, with notions of AIDS, right? Not to give her AIDS, right? Like these are Quentin's tactics, but to poison her towards this side of right. Because I believed him. I believed that he had a daughter, that he had cultivated it into a wicked practitioner. Right? Just buried her in it. Just like he was trying to bury me in it. And then within a few days, I have no daughter. Gotcha, joke's on you. Ha 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 ha. No one loves you. And then it became obvious, that everything that he's done has been to drive me to madness and suicide, right? That he's lied with wisdom, right? It's like you have to be wise to understand what we're doing here, right? And so, right, he's lied on the mercy seat. He's lied on the Holy of Holies. And he didn't do that, right? He didn't do all of this, right, for us to persist in this way for 20 years, right? In my naivete, I believed that the things that I was doing were leading to reconciliation, showing him that I respected, showing him how remorseful I am over Tribeca, right? And it took me until he admitted he has no daughter to realize, oh, okay, you've just been enjoying watching me suffer. You've just been having a laugh at chipping away at my sanity and being evil, right? Being disgustingly evil, like arguably the most evil he could be until, right? So thereafter, right? I had the thought, oh, what else is he prepared to do to put me in the ground? I thought of it immediately. And it's all in that video, Plea to the Pope, right? Really nasty, like the nastiest, highest evil black magic that anyone can practice, right? 21st century sorcery, right? And so I sent Fish an email, and I said, because I had written them about reading from my novel at the Hollywood Bowl. And of course, I never heard back from them. And while Trey was on his solo acoustic tour, right? Okay, so when I wrote them about reading from my novel, I said, oh, we should do it during what's going through your mind, right? Instead of Colonel Forbin or like any of the book songs, right? And so I sent them a letter. I sent them an email while Trey was on his solo acoustic tour, and said, this guy's evil, right? There's something not right here, right? He's He's an evil, sad, sick guy. And so I want you to send me every correspondence you receive that involves me. That's all. And of course, they never said anything, but the following day at Trey's solo show, right, he told the crowd, I got a request from a kid online, and played What's Going Through Your Mind. Right? These are Quentin's games. Right? These are Quentin's games. That's not Trey's game. Right? Oh, so I'm a fucking kid. Is that right? So fast forward to the shows that they did. There's 8 shows, I believe. The opening night's in Seattle in April. Right? And so, right, while Fish was playing, right, I tried to remote view Trey, right, and Quentin and the degenerates that surround him and call him master, right, took palpable steps with their minds to give me AIDS, to poison my body with AIDS, right, really, really ugly, like the ugliest, highest evil anyone could know, right, and has since, right, used hypodermic needles to traumatize me and try to kill me with his mind 1,000 times over, at least 40 times. Right? Earlier today, yesterday. Right? He can always deny, and it's and this is why I'm talking about it, right? Because like number one, right? Like I am in fear that I'm going to die somewhere between now and December when he kicks off the movie Critic. That's the movie he's making. Right? There's 2 ways of asking the question. Right? The first way of asking the question is, why did he cancel it? Right? And then it's like aloof, like, oh, he's an auteur, right? But the negative, right, the inverse, right, is to say, who is giving him a reason to not make it? And I'm the only one. Right? And so again, like these are the distinctions between the 2 of us, right? That he operates on a frequency of cunning, right? Of deception, of guile. He has no simple honesty, right? Which is the only way I operate. Right? I'm a bull in a china shop. Right? He stole all my secrets with his clairvoyance, right when this whole saga got started, as far as like me writing the novel. And I put it all on paper and said, yeah, there it is, you're powerful. Right? And in his mind, he was like, yeah, ha, 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 look at this jackass. He just put all this on paper. Now I can run his name through the mud all over town. And all it does is prove how sad he is. Right? Has nothing to do with me. Right, that's not right. And as far as the daughter and all of that, like he can say that I'm insane, But as far as right, psychic eye to psychic eye, I regret nothing. Right, I don't regret being a trusting, loving guy. No. That's what you're supposed to do. Right, you're supposed to do whatever the other person needs, and in that way, both of us failed. We were both arrogant. Right? I wanted to give him what he wanted. Right? But no more fucked up mind games. Right? You look me in the eye, you tell me what you want. Right? You take my letter at least. Right? You show me a genuine gesture of brotherhood and camaraderie. Oh, blah, everything I said was, no, it's all cunning, it's all guile. It can be misconstrued. Right? So, now, right, it's just evil. There's nothing good about what's occurring, right? Mike Simpson has known about me, and it's obvious anytime anyone says anything to Quentin, he has has a rehearsed look of oblivious, unknowing. Oh, I don't know. Right? How unfortunate Quentin has to endure this man, right? And the Oscar goes to, right? Well, I'm the only one who gets to be wise. I want him to die. Right? The tactics that I espouse in that video, Plea to the Pope, is the most disgusting, hideous black magic evil anyone can practice. Right? That thing that he's doing there, right, to create, a metaphor, like a comparison. It's like you're on a cliffside, right? Sheer drop, boom, 200 feet, right? But below it, it's beautiful water, right? Like the Bimini Road, like crystal blue, right? And so you can jump off the cliff, right? And 99.9% of the area that you would land in is perfectly fine, right? But that 0.1%, right, is a jagged pillar of coral, right? It comes to a point, right? A spike, a coral spike. And as soon as you land on it, dead. Right? That's the game that he's playing at, right? Where number one, right? There's this saying on the playground. They say, "I'm rubber and you're glue. Whatever I say bounces. Whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you." Right? That's true. That must be true in some way. Right? And the other thing, right, is that when you meditate on diseases in this way, right, that you're poisoning your own psyche, right? You're poisoning your own magnetic aura. And that's what happens every time, right? Right? No free lunches, right? And so now, right, he's prepared, right, like with all sincerity, right, he's going to outright lie for the last 30 years of his life, right? It's bewildering to me. I can't imagine it. What does Robert De Niro have to say? Right? What do they all have to say? Right? But there is no other reason for him to cancel the film. I am the reason he canceled the film. Right? Yesterday was hard. And that's why I redid that Shakespeare this time. Because he's a sad, evil man. Right? Who doesn't want me being myself. Right? He thinks that because I didn't eat his ass, that I should have to suffer forever. Right? If there's no validity in my claims, right, why hasn't he released the conversation with Robert De Niro, Jackie Brown? Right? If there's no validity to my claims, right, why has William Morris Endeavor refused to reply to me at all? Right? Why has the Discovery Institute refused to reply to me at all? Why has Fish refused to reply to me at all? Right? Right? That he's hovering over all of those institutions, right? Going, no, I'm the famous one. He doesn't get to see what the truth is without suing because it's me. I'm me. I'm the powerful one. I'm the one who gets to be wise. Right? And he's not wise at all, right? He's floundering in the ocean, right? I live in constant anxiety, constant fear. Can't stress that enough, right? That he's going to send someone to murder me any day. He's at his breaking point psychologically. Right? He's not prepared for this to endure for 20 years. I am, right? Because I understand what's occurring, right? I suspect perhaps if there are other people who helped him, that they're all saying, no, this is bullshit. I'm not interested in having this guy occupy this much real estate in my psyche for the rest of my life. right? And maybe they don't care about the evil, you know, like, I don't know. It's really hard. It's really hard to imagine that his wife can look at their children and say, yeah, let's do that. I don't know. I don't know. I can't imagine having so much and not being grateful for it at all. So, if you recall, we're going through this book, Spherical Models. I don't have another one yet, but it will be the truncated octahedron, which is 8 hexagons and 6 squares. Right, so it's truncated, right? So, what the fuck am I talking about? Right? I mean that Quentin Tarantino is a clairvoyant who uses telepathy and remote viewing to communicate with people with his mind. It's explained in this book, his book. It's revealed, it's not explained, it's revealed, right? That Charles Manson talks to Pussycat while she breaks into that house in Pasadena, right? Through telepathy, right? Same way that he told me he wanted me to question him about cinema speculation, right? The same way that he told me he has a daughter who loves me, the same way that he told me she's a hooker who gets pissed on and gets bukkake poured all over her for $500 an hour. And that's AllieJean_4, if you wanted to send her a message. Pretty funny, right? The same way he admitted to me that he doesn't have an adult daughter. Space is structured in a particular way. We cover a lot of things in this channel, though it's dedicated to my relationship with Quentin Tarantino, in order for us to understand that we don't really talk about show business. Number one, because it's boring, right? And number two, because it behooves us to discuss nuts and bolts, right? That we're talking shop here, right? That this is right. Right? That this is what this is. I guess there's a part of me that thinks that this is why I came into Quentin's life. Right, to hold him accountable, right? And while I am remorseful still, I always will be over Tribeca, because at that time I wanted to help him, you know? He's had nothing but opportunities from A to B to settle this reasonably between us, right? And so he would rather play fucked up mind games forever and just lie. Look everyone in the world in the eye and lie. Right? So, I've come into his life to say, right, these are the things that he does. They're not that clever, he just thinks they are. Right? So, we operate on a frequency as a baseline here on this channel, right? That life has an intellectual origin, right? That life is not an accident. This is why I wrote the Discovery Institute. This is why I wrote David Berlinski, right? And they're charlatans and frauds, right? Unless they're just afraid that he's going to torture them too. And how can I fault him for that? You know, but I suspect he tells them I'm insane, and they go and they say, "Oh gosh, how unfortunate," right? Because they don't want to upset the famous person, right? But right? They propagate the philosophy of intelligent design, and so do I. Right? So does anyone who's wise. Right? Life is not an accident. Right? Nothing is a convocation haphazardly of motion and elements. No. It's the unfolding of a divine plan. Right? And so every cubic centimeter of space is embedded with a twofold manifold, which are two halves of the same coin. The first of which, right, is an infinite complex nesting of polyhedra. Right, here's one example. Right, the spherical models are other examples. Right, here's the icosahedron. Right, beautiful model. Right, here's the dodecahedron, another beautiful model. Right. All of these are inside of each other. Right, so perfectly nested. right? That the structural sophistication dissolves into seeming non-existence. Diffused within that hologram is a conscious field, the celestial zephyr, commonly referred to as deity or God. Right? And the dignity of God's omniscience seeks to express its knowing and exerts pressure upon the manifold, upon the hologram, as motion. Right? And the specific dihedral, the angle or angles, angel or angels, with which the celestial zephyr imposes pressure upon the structural scaffold, reflects what it materializes as in the manifested creation. Right? This is the philosophy of Platonic forms. Right? This is the philosophy of Walter Russell, Russellian science, that all things reside as idea, right, in the mind of God. Forever idea. Right? Plato's allegory of the cave, this is what he's referring to. Right? That the images you see cast onto the wall of the cave are but shadows. Right? Reflecting some nobler, divine, spiritual form. So, there's nothing else that's ever been occurring. Right? And so I've been considering this a lot of late, and I feel that these constitute the first three emanations in the Kabbalah. Right? That Kether is the crown, right? Wisdom and understanding being the structural scaffold, right? Wisdom, right? And then the celestial zephyr, the motion of God the Father, the understanding, right? And the two of them, right, in union creates intellection, doth. Right? So, science asks you to believe one miracle. The Big Bang. Right? They say if you can believe that, everything else makes perfect sense. Belief, non-belief is irrelevant. If we say that that's when our condition of existence began, right? You go all the way back 13.8 billion years, how long? Right? They say within 1/100 millionth of a second, before primary powers came into being and stabilized in the universe. Strong and weak nuclear forces, quantum mechanics, general and special relativity, and electromagnetism. Right? So, we have these things like intellect, right? This like divine puppet master hovering over all, right? And it has qualities, right, which coagulate space, right? I'm saying that they're all saying the same thing, right? That the four principal powers in materialistic science, right, is just another way of saying the first three and then four emanations of deity in the Kabbalah, right? Which is saying the same thing as, right, the philosophy that I espouse on this channel. So if we say that mind is the progenitor of all things, right, then eventually, through the unfolding of the divine plan, you arrive at an end game, which is man. Man is the end of evolution. Not in a Darwinian sense, right? On a spiritual sense, right? Right? The simulation theory is true, right? That all of manifested life is a physical simulation of a nobler spiritual truth. right? And at the top of the food pyramid, the top of the food chain, right, is man. Because man has the highest levels of cognition, the densest braids of resonance in terms of understanding and wisdom and knowledge, right? Than anything that can be or will be after us. Right? Anything greater is angelic and therefore, right, not of this world. Right? But man, right, looks up, sees Orion in the sky and says, oh, that looks like me. Therefore, I must come from there. That these two things are connected. Right? That we have the capacity within us for high levels of abstraction. Right? Which allows us to offer a sincere reflection of harmony, of love, of adoration back upon our divine creator. Right? As prayer, right? As music, as art, as love, as charity. Right? The rarest of all individuals, right? Like musical prodigies, right? Can understand and refine and hone their mind, right, to such a rarefied strata that we refer to them as clairvoyance, right? That they can see through, right, the projection, right? They see through the shadow to the idealized form of the thing, right? The highest levels of clairvoyance, right? Sees the adept behaving like God. And so what do I mean when I say that? I mean that God, right, the intellectual quality that exerts motion and pressure upon the structural manifold, right, decides at a particular degree of love with which to impose its knowing as pressure, right? And so when it squeezes, right, and exerts pressure in that specific angle or angel, right, that it is collapsing space, right, to a focal point of concentration, right, engendering friction, exerting resistance as friction against itself, right? And so eventually, as it continues to push and squeeze space, right, out of a large volume into a small volume, right, that the electric resistance becomes so great, the friction and the tension becomes so high that it can no longer remain in inert space and erupts into incandescence as matter. Right? First as photons, chemical elements, atmospheric strata, mineral, vegetable, animal, man. Right? That the adept, right? The psychic clairvoyant, right? The sage medicine man, right? The voodoo practitioner. Right? That they operate on the same principle, though most of them do not understand it. Right? As Socrates espouses about the poets on his trial apology, that they offer up their rhapsody of words, right, as a pure channeling with no concern whatsoever for where it comes from or what it means. Right? And that's likely true for most psychic clairvoyants as well. Right? But what they're doing is they're pushing out a thought force in terms of remote viewing, right? To find a locale, a target, right? An object, right? And so the highest levels, right, of clairvoyant expression in man, right, sees the adept behaving like God. And what I mean by that is that they're exerting a psychic pressure upon the firmament of space, right, and seeking a result. Right? That they're seeking either to vivify, right, in terms of nuns healing the sick, right? That they can, that's the highest level, is the laying of hands in prayer, right? And far more sinister, right? In terms of my relationship with Quentin, right? That you can use your mind to try to push diseases into people, right? And that's what he's done to me, right? And hopefully it's just psychological trauma. You know, I'm a little afraid to get tested, I'll be honest, you know. And so again, right, I can't stress this enough. He's never gonna say, yeah, you got me, I went too far. Right? That if I continue promoting this channel, and I intend to, right, then eventually he'll probably pay me a lot of money. You know, perhaps he's even being told right now to pay me a lot of money. Right? I tried to play it his way, right? Like why won't I just sue him? You know, like why go through all this, right? Why like make all these videos, right? If I'm so sure that if I sued him, I would get paid. Number one, I have no money for a lawyer, or I would, right? And number two, I tried. I took a job sorting trash, right? Wrote the $500 check, put it in the mail, right? Got it sent back 3 different times, right? And after the 3rd time, right, the paperwork's right here. Took forever for it to come back. Right? He traumatized me to such a degree with those hypodermic needles, right? He got me like high on cocaine that I said, no, we're done. It depressed me so much when I thought about how evil it all is and about the other things that he's done, right, to give me AIDS. And I just got really sad. And they told me at the hospital I didn't have any drugs in my system, and that you know, that's its own relief, like that's its own wisdom, you know, and that's what makes me say, hopefully it is just psychological trauma. Right? But my point is that, right, where this thing that's occurring now, right, the reason that this channel exists, right, is not to turn the world against Quentin Tarantino, though, right? If you believe what I'm saying, you have no choice but to see him as the most evil man in the world, because that's what he is, right? The reason this exists is because I live in fear for my safety, right? That's right. That's why I make these videos, because right, I tried to do it his way, right? I tried to get a job and pay for the lawsuit, right? And he thought that it was funnier to just traumatize me every day, and so now, right, no more jobs. Like a major point, like he was being a bully to me because I had my attention diverted. It was, you know, they were like, oh, we're paying you to sort this trash, you know, so I had to sort the trash, right? And so while I was doing that, he just traumatized me as much or as little as he wanted, you know. Really, really sad. It's really sad how evil and ugly he is, and how he's cast his allegiances so much with cunning, so much with guile, right? That he is prepared to outright lie to everyone in his life for the last 20 years of his life, 30 years of his life, right? That he's so oblivious, right? And unwise, right? And doesn't respect this thing that he does, right? That he puts a bunch of psychic baggage on his little 3-year-old daughter, right? Never thinking about what that's gonna do in 15 years. Right, and so what do I mean exactly when I say that? Right, it's all in that first essay on magic, right? But right, the expression of a magical spell, right, or magical intent, is a novel neuronal firing, right, of neuronal brain cells, right? That there's an electrical condition throughout the whole body, right, but primarily in the brain, right? And you can have a thought force, right, of intention, right? A thought is a force, and philosophy should be an energy, right? Albert Pike, right? And then you can say, oh, I want this guy to believe that I have a daughter who loves me, and then boom, send it out, right? Like either he has a girl that's like helping him, or he does it all in his own mind, and it's a sick intellectual exercise, right? But that same energy, right, every time he pushes it to me, right, also lands at his little girl, and she absorbs all of it. It's from her father, it's from her parents, you know, right? And so, right, even when I was in LA, she would turn into a bitch who just liked to fuck, who was just a whore, right? Then he thought, oh, I want him to think that my daughter's a bitch who just fucks men because she's a whore. bing, hit me, but also hit his little girl, right? My daughter's a whore, right? My daughter's a slut who likes to fuck anybody, right? And then he had another thought. Oh, my daughter's a prostitute that men pay $500 an hour to get bukkake poured all over her. My daughter's a bitch who gets paid money to get fucked by multiple men at the same time. That's my little girl. Bing! Hits his daughter every time. Right? That's my point. Right? And he doesn't want me talking about these things. Right? But it doesn't do me any favors. Like, he's gonna be evil. Right? That there's nothing like, yes, like, okay, major point, right? That I could do the same things too, right? But, right, it's hard for me to justify doing that because that's, I think he would just send people to murder me. That's all I think would occur. Anyone who's a member of this channel, right? You watch that video, Plea to the Pope, it's all there, right? If you wanted to be on this side of right? I can't control what he does, right? But he has people watching me constantly. So even if I wanted to, and I don't, right? I don't sanction that behavior at all, right? But if someone is out there, right, in La La Land, right? La La Land of the internet, I mean, right? And you feel that you need to help me, that's, right? I mean, I suspect nothing would occur, but the gesture would be enough, right? I mean, I don't want to fight. That's not what I want. These games this is high evil, right? This is ugly. It's so fucking ugly. I can't stress that enough, right? Give me a good stand one of these days. I suppose I'll stop. I wanted to do that Shakespeare again. I found a formula. I think I'm going to start learning it the day before. And of course, Quentin, right? A lot of my struggling stemmed from him being evil. Like, we have a hive mind. I can't stress that enough, right? And he's always just going to say, oh, gosh, I don't know what you're talking about, right? But it's in his book, right? I'm not talking out of my ass here. It's in his book, right? That he's interested in telepathy, right? Brad Pitt is Cliff Booth, right? And Quentin Tarantino is Charles Manson. If that tells you anything. Look how clever I am. Breathe in the air. Don't be afraid to care. Leave, but don't leave me. Look around, choose your own ground. Long you live and high you fly. Only if you ride the tide, balanced on the tail you see, is all your life will ever be. Run, rabbit, run. Dig that hole, forget the sun. And when at last the work is done, time to dig another one. Long you live and high you fly, only if you ride the tide, balanced on the biggest wave, race towards an early grave. Home again. I like to be here when I can, and when I come home cold and tired, it's good to warm my bones beside the fire. Far away across the field, the tolling of the iron bell. Here's magic spells. See what's good in your life, right? Think about everything that I said. Know that life is not an accident. 9601 Wilshire Boulevard. Right, 1822 North Vermont Avenue. All right, like, comment, subscribe, share. Get the word out. Even if it's just to mock me, that's fine. Cheers. God bless. Have a good weekend. Pray for me. The weekends are always tough.